All right, let's get started. Yesterday, I mentioned about Iranian aircrafts, and he mentions it here. So,
Privileged on a number of occasions to have as a guest on the Duran. Anyway, he was the first to spot the fact that when the Pentagon reported the loss of these three fighter jets, it also commented on the fact that the Iranian Air Force appeared to be conducting offensive operations. So it looks as if
2 days into the crisis, Iranian's air force is conducting operations. He goes on to discuss what type of aircrafts they might be using, but the fact that they have anything in the air, that's pretty impressive. And it means that the U.S. does not have complete air superiority in Iran. So I just thought I'd mention it since I talked about it last stream, but I didn't show any proof of where I'd gotten that from. Next, let's look at this.
What form that would take. He added it likely won't be necessary. There's a sentence that Marco Rubio said to reporters on Capitol Hill on Monday.
Yeah, this video is just about this particular sentence. That's why I'm showing it.
Sentence that every constitutional lawyer, every war power scholar, every foreign ally who was not consulted before Operation Epic Fury launched, and every American senator who walked out of his classified briefing saying the answers were completely and totally insufficient, will be citing for the next decade as the moment the Trump administration accidentally told the world the truth about why this war started. The sentence is this: we knew that there was going to be an Israeli...
Yeah, this is another video I had about the interceptors. But yes, this is important too.
We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties. Rubio said the threat from Iran was imminent because it knew it would retaliate against the U.S. if attacked, including by Israel. It was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond.
I will say that is now their sort of the official explanation that they put forward, even accidentally. But I will highlight that there were articles from a few days ago saying Trump wants Israel to attack first. I don't know. No, all these are more recent because you had a flood of articles about Iran because of the war. But right before, everything went to hell and the war started, there were reports in the media that Trump was talking that it might look better for him if Israel attacked first, and it looked like Israel had forced them into the war rather than the United States doing the first strike. So keep that with a grain of salt that this might just be PR, that Trump might have been all on board with the attack, but he thought that PR-wise it'd be better if Israel struck first. So that said, with that background, the official explanation, even if we take it at face value, is very bad.
And respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. Rubio said it was automatic. If we stood and waited for that attack to come first, before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. Read that sequence with legal precision. Iran was going to be attacked by Israel. Iran would respond to that attack against America. Therefore, America attacked Iran first. Not because Iran was attacking America, not because Iran had launched missiles at American forces, because Israel was going to attack Iran, and Iran would retaliate against American forces as a consequence of Israel's action. And America decided
Israel, in order to bomb Iran, because it's quite far, its jets need to refuel midway. So we do support their strikes on Iran with those aircrafts we have that refuel jets mid-flight.
To preemptively strike Iran to reduce the casualties it would take from Iran's response to Israel's operation. That is not a legal justification for war under the War Powers Act.
Yeah.
That is...
It's Trump, by starting this war, has actually committed probably an impeachable offense, something that Democrats can go after him and actually have a point. And so, if this war costs in the midterm, this is what they'll use to impeach him because it's the strongest case. He started a war without asking Congress, a major war with huge ramifications. That's why it's so bad for him. I can't believe he went into this. The video I thought I was starting off was, well, I think this video has the same point, so it'll be fine. About U.S. interceptors.
There's a number that the UAE Ministry of Defense published on its official X account on Tuesday morning.
We publish 6 to 7 interceptors a month. If you've been following the Iran war at all, you know we've been using hundreds of these missiles to intercept Iranian drones. Well, we produce 6 or 7 of these a month.
A number that stops every defense analyst, every Patriot battery operator, and every Gulf government finance minister who reads it, because it contains inside itself the arithmetic of when this war ends, not when America wants it to end, not when Iran agrees to stop, when the math forces the conclusion that no more defense...
Sorry about the AI basically slop video, but whoever writes this, whether it's AI or a person, I'm hoping it's a person because it's pretty damn good in some cases. The script of them are pretty good and accurate.
The number is 645. The United Arab Emirates has intercepted 169 missiles out of 182 detected, with the rest landing in the sea. It has also intercepted 645 drones, with an additional 44 hitting within state territory, according to its Ministry of Defense. 645 drones intercepted in 5 days. Each interception requires one Patriot PAC-3 interceptor missile. Each PAC-3 interceptor costs approximately $4 million.
I'm playing this video to show the math. Not only the cost, but he's going to get into the production in a second.
Each Patriot battery carries between 12 and 16 interceptors in its launcher. Do the arithmetic. 645 intercepts divided by 14 interceptors per battery equals 46 full Patriot battery reloads consumed by the UAE alone in 5 days against drones that Iran manufactures for somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 each. The UAE has now spent approximately $2.6 billion in interceptor missiles defending against drones whose total manufacturing cost was somewhere around $32 million. That is a cost exchange ratio of 80 to 1 in Iran's favor. And Kuwait intercepted 178 ballistic missiles and 384 drones. And Bahrain intercepted 70 missiles and 76 drones. And Qatar intercepted 101 missiles and 24 drones. Add those numbers together. Add them to the American interceptors consumed defending the Fifth Fleet, Al-Udeid, Al-Dhafra, and Ali al-Salem. Add them to the Israeli interceptors consumed defending Tel Aviv and Haifa and Beit Shemesh. Now ask the question that every defense procurement officer in the Gulf is asking their American counterpart this Tuesday morning. How many interceptors are left?
That is the key question. I hear that Trump is moving interceptors from Japan and Korea to make up shortfalls in the Gulf. Poor Ukraine's not going to get any anytime soon. But we only produce 6 or 7 of these a month. And look how many we're using.
Israel's 12-day war with Iran in June last year, the U.S. blew through about a quarter of its THAAD missile interceptors. The U.S. has 7 THAAD systems and used 2 of them in Israel during the conflict. A quarter of America's entire THAAD interceptor stock in 12 days of the June 2025 war. This war is on day 5. This war is covering not one country, but 11 simultaneously. This war has already produced more total intercepts in its first 5 days than the entire June 2025 conflict. Rubio confirmed publicly that America produces 6 to 7 interceptors per month. 6 to 7 per month. Against a rate of consumption that the
say 6 to 7 per month.
UAE alone has just demonstrated.
I guess it's not a huge confirmation coming from an AI slop video. So let's actually go. U.S. interceptor missiles production each month. I did verify this with it. And see, the number I got last time was, it's still small. This is their currently production is about 8 per month, but 6, 7, 8, it's still, think of how many you were using. It's, the math just doesn't add up.
Corporation. You pick a new CEO. What happened when Field Marshal Rommel was fatally wounded in a car driving through the countryside of Normandy during the invasion of Normandy by U.S. and British forces? He was replaced. I think there's an obsession on the Israeli side with killing leaders. And this passion for assassination has found a home now with the CIA and our president. But I wouldn't expect much to come from it. There's an assumption that Iran is some sort of backward tribal society where every time the tribal chief is killed, there has to be a new gathering.
Yeah, I don't
and
think
until that gathering.
I don't think that work. For one thing's so blah blah blah. One commenter made the comment that I stutter sometimes, and it's because I try to talk so fast and then I mess up my words. So I need to take a breath and calm down and speak more clearly. Anywho, I don't think Iran will collapse like Syria did last year, because there is no ideology sustaining Syria. The people of Syria had no reason to stay together. But in Iran, there is an enemy. It's called Israel. And that enemy just blew up a school full of children. Just brazenly attacked and killed all of Iran's leaders. If I was Iranian, I wouldn't want Israel to get away with that. I'd be against anyone who tried to come in and, change the regime and set up a Israel puppet state. I would be against that. They have something to rally behind, an enemy that they have been preparing to fight against for decades. Syria didn't have that. And that's why I don't think Iran is going to collapse. I think that they are ideologically united and motivated. And I think the part of this video I really wanted was at the very beginning.
To elect a new replacement Ayatollah. They had an interim immediately placed in there, and they met with this council, and I think it was the Guardian Council or something like that, but were they the guys who were basically...
Oh yeah, that's right. We bombed and killed another whole bunch of important people.
To select. Well, turns out that the Israeli intelligence got wind of it, and they found out, and they flattened the building. So you can see that's where they were in right now. We don't know anything about casualties. We don't know if anybody survived, if everybody died. It's unclear, but this would be another major blow for the Iranian side. And certainly is going to continue to weaken the governing structures, and I'm sure that's the exact intent on the American side.
That's really interesting. Do you have any news, and are you happy to have landed in Dubai at this particular time? You might get to see some interesting fireworks. Oh, I'd love to hear from someone who is actually in the Middle East. Yeah, unless you live near a military base or diplomatic quarters, I don't think you're the target of Iran right now. I think that there's little danger to you directly. I do think that in terms of travel, that definitely might be some difficulties there if with missed flights. I live 10 minutes away from the U.S. Embassy. They got hit a few hours ago. Well, 10 minutes, if it's 10 minutes walking or 10 minutes car, if it's 10 minutes car, that's still a good safety margin. If 10 minutes walking, then you're starting to be, it's still, at least it's not a military base. Did you have a look at the damage to the U.S. Embassy when you were getting home? Did you drive by it? Actually, Wonder if they're even letting people go close.
Israelis.
Meantime, I'm going to continue this. So apparently they're having a vote. A little bit of debris was found in my neighborhood, and a few friends felt the shock. Yeah. The thing is, it's honestly just like a really intense storm hits your area, and there's damage, and you hear about things. It's sort of exciting. If it goes on a long time, it'll stop being as much fun. I know that already. It'd be like, yeah, I'd like to be able to take a plane without any disruptions, please. I'd like to not have booms and shaking in my house every few hours. Yes. So hopefully, we'll have to see what happens. If some Gulf states have talked about joining in the attack against Iran, but if they do that Iran has a lot of missiles that are short range, that can reach targets in closer Gulf states. A lot more than it has missiles that can reach Israel. So if, we'll have to see if the Gulf states actually do commit anything serious against Iran. There is always a possibility for sorry, I'm stuttering again. Escalation. There we go. And I was getting back to this video. A bunch of clerics were gathering together to decide the new supreme leader, and apparently they were killed.
Side, we're going to see what happens from that. Iran is a very large country. They have a big bureaucracy and a lot of components to its governing facilities and its structure. But that can't help but be really hard. If that's true, if the reports are true and that's what was in there, we'll wait and see what kind of an impact that has. But there's also things going on both sides of this. But to try to figure out...
Okay. In my personal opinion, it's like Iran is playing Angry Birds. Their attacks are not nearly powerful enough to cause any real damage. Well, I don't know. You don't live in Israel, so I think Israel is getting a whole different ball game in terms of missiles coming in. And they have destroyed stuff like the radar array in Qatar. That's destroyed. And the final thing is, a lot of it is being intercepted right now. From that video just a second ago, I mean, like very high, 80, 90% are being intercepted. What happens when interceptor missiles run out? You see, that's the problem. It might be Angry Birds now, as long as Gulf states have a somewhat functioning air defense. But if that air defense runs out, yeah, it could get bad. That's the thing to worry about. So, and I think this is just my gut feeling because there's no way to know for sure because of no military's published figures, but I'm thinking about a week before Gulf states run out and 2 weeks before Israel runs out of interceptors. From all the vague numbers I have. U.S. only produces 8 of them a day, and they're using hundreds each day. And we've been sending hundreds, if not thousands, to Ukraine, so it's not good math.
Social post that has been published since this war began. The phrase is, destroying American political centers. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, said it had begun efforts to destroy American political centers in the region. The explosion at the Washington Embassy in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, is a move in this direction.
Another AI video, but I think this point is very salient. That is what's happening. They're attacking embassies, and they're going after U.S. targets in any way they can to create pain.
The IRGC posted on Telegram, American political centers, not American military bases. Those have been targeted since day one. Not American energy interests. Those were targeted through Ras Tanura and the Stina Imperative. Not American intelligence personnel.
Well, just highlighting that. Here's another good.
There's a question that Trump asked.
Again, these are AI videos, but so we're not going to watch a lot of it. But so they make some salient points. some good points.
Asked one of his senior
I'm
advisors
just
on
going to go
Monday
through
afternoon.
those one by one.
A question that, according to people briefed on the conversation, produced a silence that lasted several seconds before any answer came. And the silence itself contains more strategic information than any answer that was eventually given. The question was, who do we call to stop this? Not who is in charge of Iran's military.
That's it. If you kill all leaders, who do you call to talk to? That's... let's get away from the AA stuff.
Because I do believe that it's going to end up being a mistake. Just like everything we've
I think it is quite likely for the Gulf states to run out of interceptors before Iran military gets disabled. I do too, just because Iran is so mountainous, so spread out. They've been preparing for decades with all these underground passageways. There's YouTube videos of their underground tunnels full of missiles. And I hate to say this, but missiles that reach Israel and missiles that reach Dubai are two different beasts. Iran has like 20,000 or something that can reach Dubai. It's shorter range missiles. So, yeah, and it can make more of those easily. If the war drags out, yes, the interceptors will run dry at one point. My guess is a week after, like somewhere around this week, upcoming weekend, is when, and that's when it's going to get real bad for everyone, especially Bush, when, for U.S. military might, for the projection of U.S. military might, this will be really bad because we're supposed to protect Gulf states. We have bases there. It's our responsibility, it's our promise to them. Like in Dubai, that's why you have a base there. And if we fail, if we start a war we started, and then we fail to provide the air defense, it's a failure, a betrayal.
done in the Middle East has been a mistake. Excuse me. And Donald Trump, up until he launched the war against Iran, agreed with me. Everything that I've heard the president say.
Yeah, that I've noticed this too, and I'm trying to figure out or wondering about it. Is Trump used during his first term? He didn't start any wars. He was not a war president. He wasn't along with the U.S. military complex, eternal, everlasting wars all over the place. But this time around, he didn't put an end to Ukraine. He could have. Stop intelligence sharing, stop sending weapons. Ukraine collapses. Ukraine is our proxy. But he didn't do that. Instead, he puts more sanctions on Russia. He then is talking about, and it probably will send, he would have sent Tomahawk missiles. Iran might throw a wrench into that. I think Warographics came out with a new video. You should check out that one. Okay, Warographics. Oh, let's have a look. Get back to that other video in a second. Oh. Warographics. Warographics is now Warfronts. Okay, got it. I haven't watched any videos from them, so let's see. Or made it.
It wasn't so very long ago that the Western world was trembling in its boots. Decades after the Cold War, from Ukraine to West Africa to the South China Sea, the US and Europe's longtime adversaries were all preparing for violent days
It's nice it's not an AI.
ahead. At the time, they were called the Axis of Upheaval, a four-way alignment between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, working together at unprecedented scale with
I love how North Korea is thrown in, this tiny country. Yes, it has nuclear weapons, but its production capacity is quite limited. It's not a very big player.
America and its entire global alliance in their sights. But
One of your favorite geopolitics channels? Well, I'll might subscribe, but let me first have a look at the video.
spin the clock forward to early March of 2026, and Iran is learning the hard way what the Axis of Upheaval was really worth. Right now, American and Israeli warplanes are laying waste to targets across the country, and a growing alignment of European and Middle Eastern powers agree. No matter what happens afterwards, the Iranian regime must go. Flashback to the axis of upheaval, and would expect to see a massive coordinated response with one of the world's largest economies in China and one of the world's largest nuclear arsenals in Russia.
Yeah, Iran and Russia are pretty close together, and they're connected by the sea. Can transfer weapons that way.
Rallying to the Ayatollah's defense. But the Ayatollah's dead. The tides have clearly turned against Iran on the international stage, and in Iran's ultimate moment of need, its allies were nowhere to be found.
I'd actually, if there had been a Venezuela moment, that means somehow right after we struck and killed the supreme leader, if new party had risen up and the U.S. puppet state had been put in, that would have been a U.S. victory. But I think that window is already closed. I didn't think it likely, but after Venezuela, which I don't know much about Venezuela to be fair, so. But if now that possibility, I think, is zero. Oh, thanks for the follow. Sound by Soma. Let's continue here.
So let's start with the elephant in the room. The global axis of upheaval, as described by Western analysts through a fair portion of
Axis
the
of evil. I remember that from the war in Iraq.
2020s, just doesn't exist. Although they might work together on a range of strategic pursuits, Russia and China are not formal allies, and neither of those nations have agreed to any alliance with Iran. Their interests generally cluster in the same direction, and those interests have led them to share military hardware, back each other up diplomatically, and otherwise support each other in
So, with the way U.S. is behaving lately, I think they're being pushed closer together.
deep and fascinating ways, but geopolitical collaboration and alliances, they ain't the same. Of course, geostrategy is a tricky thing, and just because two nations don't have, say, a mutual defense clause or a formal alliance on paper, that doesn't mean that they aren't working together in pursuit of a broader plan. In fact, as one Western defense expert
It's called BRICS.
put it for our Warfronts team recently, it would be fair to say that the level of alignment between Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea today is considerably greater than the alignment between Japan, Germany, and Italy at the outbreak of World War II. So even though Russia, China, and Iran weren't formal allies before the United States and Israel began their current offensive, there was ample reason to wonder if that attack could be the moment that Russia and China drew their line in the sand. Alliance or no, an out
Though I don't think they'll do anything with one caveat. If Israel uses a nuke, then I think things might get real serious. That could push Russia and China into the war. It could make things really messy and complicated. And it's a real risk. Once Israel runs out of interceptors and it's beginning, then Iran unleashes hell on it. And honestly, I don't think Netanyahu is the most stable of individuals.
Navigating nowhere.
Hey, navigating. It's an Iran day. More Iran stuff. There's still a war raging on, and looks like it's not getting better so far.
outside observer could argue that Moscow and Beijing regard Tehran as a vital strategic partner, or that if world powers are playing a constant real-life game of Risk, that Iran has become the sort of ally they would do anything to protect. But as it turns out, well, it's just not the case, is it?
No, it's not the case, but Iran is pretty important to both of them. China gets a huge amount of its oil from Iran, and the United States just took over basically Venezuela, and it diverted all oil flows away from China, from Venezuela. So China does have an interest.
I mean, it's still early in the ongoing Iran conflict as of the time of writing, but when it comes to Russian...
And while I don't think China will join militarily, I think they will do a lot. I think they will do a lot in terms of humanitarian aid to keep the populace happy and keep the war going. A lot in terms of materials, so that Iran does have underground factories to make missiles and is going to supply those places with what they need. So it's been doing the same thing in the Russia-Ukraine war with Russia, supplying everything Russia needs to keep going and boost its industrial capacity. So I think China will do that with Iran. And that's why I don't think Iran is going to run out of missiles anytime soon.
Or Chinese intervention, this is one of those times when we really don't feel the need to give a disclaimer on just how drastically the situation could change by the time this episode is released. If Russia and China were going to spring to Iran's defense and take an active role in this particular military conflict, well, suffice it to say, that would have happened already. But more to the point, the United States, Israel, and their international allies
Honestly, it's very possible that US is telling the media about preventing Iran from developing nukes is a bunch of BS. I believe it's an economic war to gain control over the Straits of Hormuz. Anything to protect the dollar's dominance. Yes, I talked about that yesterday. I do believe that is a key component of this. The petrodollar, it's called. Iran has been selling in renminbi, Chinese currency, instead of the US dollar. And that is a threat. And they went after Venezuela for the same reason. But this might backfire on them. Some people are suggesting Gulf states might turn towards China because if the U.S. fails to protect them, we'll have to see. And I also think the dollar hegemony, the U.S. hegemony over the world is crumbling. And the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, that's ruled the world, globalists, and there's all kinds of signs of that. One was Trump's election. Brexit was another in Europe. Like, that was not according to the plan. And Ukraine war, another one, where the plan was for Russia to collapse, to be balkanized, to be broken up into little states. That was the aim, to use Ukraine as a weapon to bring Russia to heel. That hasn't worked. It's backfiring. And they're trying. Another thing, COVID, they tried to do vaccine IDs. So now they're trying with digital ID on the line. They want to, its goal is to implement a China-style social credit score system in the West. Get everyone linked up to an ID and then link all their actions to that ID and to influence you that way. You get debanked and your life gets shut down if you do things out of line, if your carbon footprint is too big, etc. Anyway, it's failing. All of it is failing. They're trying. And I think this Iran war is another trying moment. And it's a desperate Hail Mary pass to try to save the dollar and keep the dollar system going a little bit longer. Because one thing you mentioned about dollar dominance, you understand, it's not just the dollar. It's the treasury market and the entire U.S. financial system. If the dollar goes down, those two goes with it. And it's going to be one of the biggest financial shocks the world has ever seen. I'm making another video on Iran today. It's the topic. I've taken to just uploading the entire segment on Iran. Don't have time to edit everything. Yeah. And it's I find it fascinating and it's important. I guarantee you this is going to impact your life, what's going on in Iran. I don't think, by the way, the dollar collapse is going to be that soon. Let me put it to you this way, good way to put it. Inflation. Historic. Historic graph. One image. Long-term inflation. If you have a good chart, here we go. This is a little bit old, but you see in general, this was inflation spiraling out of control going into 1980s. In 1980s, that is when Iran-Contra began, when the petrodollar was set up, or reinforced. And the U.S. hegemony was really set up. And that brought inflation down. Now I think it's going to go up the other way. It might be, I think, a little bit steeper than this time. But it's not just going to go straight up. I think 5 years before we start to get into really serious inflation is my bet. But that's all of this depends on a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes in financial system and central banks. So it's hard to give any type of really precise timetable. It's sort of judging from the outside. But I think graphs can give you a good thing to go by for long term. And I think if you look, this sort of starting to head up here, and it's going to look at the blue line specifically. It's going to continue accelerating upwards. Let's get back to the video. Here we go.
Understood before the conflict ever began that neither Russia nor China would intervene, nor would they even make that decision together. Russia's strategic calculus is very different than China's, even where Iran is concerned. This time, though, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin agree. The loss of Iran may be unfortunate, but it's simply not worth going to war over. To understand why, we've got to start with Russia.
I agree with this, but they're going to offer a lot of aid. And there are some commenters that say that they're not going to intervene unless it looks like Iran's going to lose. There's some people that have said that, and that is the case too, because right now it doesn't look like Iran's going to lose. If it was going to collapse, it would have already happened. And every day that goes by, U.S. doesn't have the ability to sustain heavy bombing campaigns for a long time. Also, Iran is destroying air bases across the Middle East, so we don't have anywhere to launch them from. And because we're scared of the missiles, we have to keep U.S. carriers really far away, and it's difficult. Fighters need to refuel mid-flight to get all the way to Iran and bomb them. We don't have as strong leverage against Iran as maybe we had, like, for example, when we attacked Iraq. And our missile stockpiles are decreasing, our interceptors are depleting. All time is on Iran's side, unfortunately.
Where the world's most volatile nuclear strongman has chosen to back down from yet another fight.
I must say, Putin, the fact that the war has not exploded into thermonuclear war, I'd say a big part of it is on Putin. Because of all the provocations the U.S. is doing against Russia, and he has chosen again and again not to give in to those provocations. To give you an example, a lot of people say that the Iran war is justified because Iran armed proxies that then killed people, like Hezbollah or the Iraqi militias or the Houthis. Well, if you can hold the Houthis responsible, Iran responsible for the Houthis, then Russia should be able to hold the United States responsible for what Ukraine is doing with U.S. weapons. It's the same dynamic. But Putin has not retaliated against U.S. bases in Europe, not done what Iran has done. And that's a good thing, considering how that might have ended in thermonuclear war.
Sooner or later, every nation has to pick a side, and the 2020s have been a grimly educational experience for nations that chose to align themselves with Russia. Not long ago, the nation of Azerbaijan conquered the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh and put an end to its military rivalry with Armenia, paying zero mind to the Russian peacekeepers that Armenia thought it could depend on. At the end of 2024, when Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad stared down the barrel of a rebel offensive, Putin didn't offer Assad military support, but an apartment and a life under the careful watch of Russian handlers. When in early 2026, longtime partner...
Well, that's better than some dictators of Gaddafi in Libya. It didn't have a fate that pleasant. He died a rather horrible way.
Nicolas Maduro was spirited out of Venezuela by American special operators. Russia offered about the weakest condemnations possible and signaled that it would do nothing to change his fate. Even still, there was some reason to believe that Iran might be a special case. After all, this is a nation that's drawn much closer to Russia since its 2022 invasion of Ukraine, when most world...
Honestly, China and Iran, that connection is stronger. One, because Russia is busy with Ukraine, so the aid it can offer is more limited. But two, because Russia is an oil producer, so is Iran. Russia doesn't depend, for example, on Iran for oil. China does. So it make more sense to look at the China-Iran connection. Okay, let's just see what this is. Okay. I'll definitely end my react portion with that video, but let's continue with.
Nations have done the opposite. After Iran passed the technical specs for its one-way kamikaze drones to Russia, Moscow's interpretations
This
on
war
the drones have become a key asset in its ongoing war. In early 2025, the two nations signed a comprehensive security
Yes, but the Iranian drones were important to Russia, but Russia now produces the drone itself. It did for a time use Iranian produced drones, but then it set up its own factories. And now all the drones it's using, all the ammunition, everything is produced in Russia. I mean, Russia is huge. It's the one country in the world that actually has every resource. It doesn't need anyone else.
partnership, signaling to the entire world that Russia-Iran relations weren't just positive, but constantly improving, and each nation has played a critical role in helping the other skirt Western sanctions. Just last year, when
And Russia did deliver attack helicopters to Iran right before the conflict. So it's not, and that's what we know of. It's doing other things we don't know of behind the scenes.
asked about how deep Russia's military collaboration with
Do you think Iran is using cheap drone barrage right now to drain interceptors and use stronger firepower later? Yes, I do. It's what I would do. It makes sense. We watched a video earlier about the math of the Gulf states are spending billions of dollars of interceptor missiles to shoot down drones worth millions. It's like 1,000 to 1 ratio. That's why everything, the financial markets and oil prices, for example, are still somewhat okay. One, because I'll get to it later. Trump said something really stupid that somewhat reassured the oil market. I'll get to that in a little bit. But if you look at oil prices, yes, they're up, but they're not up. It should be up more than that with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump did say something stupid earlier today that brought them down. And I'll talk about that in a bit, because it was one of the stupidest things Trump has said in a very long time. But my point I was making, the reason they're not up here at 90 is because they're still interceptor missiles. The Gulf states still have a functioning air defense. But a 1 week of Iran sending out all these cheap drones to drain interceptor stocks, and once those are gone, it starts raining down the real stuff. That is when things in the financial market will get real.
with Iran really went, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claimed, quote, "The sky is the limit." When Iran's moment of truth finally came, well, we'll leave it to Politico author Eva Hartog to explain what happened next, quoting, "As Tehran was being pounded by US and Israeli bombs on Saturday morning, its top diplomat dialed Moscow's number. On the other end of the line, according to an official Russian statement, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov offered his Iranian counterpart sympathy and promised his verbal support." End quote. In the immediate aftermath of Israel and America's opening attack, Russia issued some of the most forceful condemnations at its disposal, railing against this unprovoked act of aggression against a sovereign nation and insisting that Trump and Netanyahu were, quote, "plunging the Middle East into an abyss of uncontrolled escalation." Russia raised the specter of radiological warfare while simultaneously accusing Iran's enemies of using its nuclear program as false pretext for an attack. When Iranian state media confirmed
I mean, remember, Trump last year said we completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program when he bombed Iran. And now they were a week away from the bomb, is what some people in the administration and U.S. Congress were saying this time. You can't trust anything. It's like Iraq had weapons of mass destructions. It's the same lie. There are videos out there, actually, of Netanyahu going back decades saying, Iran is on the verge of nuclear weapons. Again and again and again and again. It's Ayatollah that the U.S. killed issued a fatwa against building nuclear weapons. And it's a religious theocracy, Iran, that had power, that fatwa. And the next supreme leader, he's going to reverse that. I have a feeling.
that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei had been killed in the opening salvo, Vladimir Putin
You've seen those Netanyahu clips. It's insane how he's just gaslighting everyone. It is. there are montages like that about the Iraq War and the United States, but Netanyahu is not a good person. He's not. I mean, amazed that he got away with funding Hamas for years, and then he managed to blame that on Iran, because people like Asmongold and Nuxtaku believe that Iran was behind Hamas. No, I'll just put that in for people that are just tuning in. Israeli support Hamas. There's an entire wiki page about it. For years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas. Now it's blown up in his face. How Israel secretly propped up Hamas. People don't know about that. He's managed to pin that on October 7th on Iran. That's the power of media propaganda.
Putin personally condemned his death as murder. Behind the scenes, however, it quickly became clear that Russia hadn't just chosen to sit on the sidelines, but that the decision hadn't been all that difficult. Vladimir Putin held a video conference with Russia's Security Council to discuss the situation, but didn't participate in or arrange any calls between the Russian and Iranian militaries. Putin didn't reach out to Iranian leaders, instead leaving the job for his foreign minister, and nor is Putin known to have privately threatened Western adversaries with the prospect of Russian intervention. Ukrainian government advisor Anton Gerashenko alleged, writing on X, that Iran did try to invoke clauses that it believed would pull Moscow to its defense, and requested that Russia activate S-400 missile defense systems as well as electronic warfare systems in Syria in order to interfere with Israeli and American military operations. Gerashenko's account is obviously a bit suspect, given his alignment with a nation currently being invaded by Russia, but if his account is accurate, then Russia responded to that request by
I wouldn't trust Ukraine too much on many things.
deactivating its radar systems in Syria and dismissing Iran's request for intervention on a technicality. Whether or not that particular detail is accurate or not, the truth is that Russia had been laying the groundwork for non-intervention months before the US and Israel launched their strikes. Russia has owed Iran military hardware for years that could have been a massive benefit to Iran in a conflict like this, relative
Yes, the planes.
advanced Su-35 air superiority fighters, of which Iran has 50 currently on order, and S-400 air defense systems.
I think that was a bargaining chip. Don't send Tomahawks to Ukraine, and we won't send all this to Iran. I think that's one thing Russia might have done.
That Iran's been desperate to acquire, but that Russia has failed to provide. The military aid that Russia did send in advance was underwhelming at best. A handful of attack helicopters that were useless in the kind of war Israel and the US intended to fight, and an order of shoulder fire.
That's not entirely fair, because the United States was hoping for an uprising of the population, more protest, and protesters overthrowing the government. And in that scenario, attack helicopters could be useful.
Missiles, of which a very small number may have been delivered by the time Iran's adversaries launched their attack. There are currently no indications that Russia will try to provide Iran copies of its own Shahed.
I disagree with that point too. I think the whole point of the attack helicopters is it's something that could be delivered quickly. And there was a real fear that there might be a Venezuela moment in Iran, I think, on the part of China and Russia and a lot of the world, because Venezuela took so many people by surprise, and the Iran and China weren't worried that the bombs would bring down Iran, because the bombs haven't been brought down to Iran. They were worried about some type of betrayal from within, some coup taking out the leadership of Iran, some U.S. or Israel proxy rising up and riding into Tehran and taking over after U.S. bombs all government buildings and stuff. And so in that scenario, attack helicopters could have been useful. So I wouldn't say it was completely useless.
136 drone, mass-produced in Russia as the Jaren, even though Iran already knows how to use the drones and helped Russia set up its own production lines. So Russia...
Yeah, that's what I was saying, helped Russia set up its own production lines. Russia has its own production lines of these drones, so it's not... The Iranian war won't hurt Russia in Ukraine. So just pointing that out.
Coming to Iran's defense, but we'd certainly forgive anybody watching this at home if you come away from that assessment a bit confused. After all, this is the same Vladimir Putin who's been invading his sovereign neighbor for 4 years and has positioned himself quite deliberately as an archenemy of the global West. But despite Putin's rhetoric...
I am curious, because the framing of this, it's not like, it's not straight up Western propaganda. but it's not. I think it's a little bit off from the truth still. The war front, like the framing of. If you really know all the background details about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you come away with the thing that Russia is acting. It's doing what it's doing is common sense for Russia. It's inevitable. The fault lies mainly in the West and Ukraine. At least that's my perspective, but that's a topic for another day. So it's saying this. Let's see. Still, the format of the video is really nice.
The same Vladimir Putin who's been invading his sovereign neighbor for 4 years and has positioned himself quite deliberately as an archenemy of the global West. But despite Putin's rhetoric, Russia's reasons not to intervene here are largely pragmatic, starting with the war in Ukraine. Russia simply doesn't have combat capacity to spare right now, and certainly not at a scale where it could rival the US and Israel in a conflict some 3,000 kilometers away from Moscow.
Well, Iran doesn't need boots on the ground because there's no invading army. The only thing Russia could have done more is to send more its own version of the interceptor missiles, air defenses to Iran, and Russia needs those honestly because U.S. and Ukraine are sending drones into Russia and attacking stuff. They need their air defense, so they can't afford to do that part. But they did what they can, which is send the attack helicopters, and I hear from a trusted source, a trusted YouTuber that has his own sources, that it was Russia that shut down the protests in Iran. That it was the one that shut down Starlink's terminals. They were fueling the protesters. And the U.S. was really unhappy with how quickly the protests died in Iran, like Trump, and it was going to be part of their big operations to knock out Iran. Was probably wanted these protests to go on for weeks, and then U.S. comes in and bombs, and it's a regime change. Russia's the one that shut that down. Russia has been doing stuff.
Russia has neither the equipment nor the military infrastructure to battle for air superiority over Iran, and if it can't counter the US and Israel, it's best not to even try.
Because Russia is the one that has most experience battling Starlink and jamming Starlink, because Ukraine is using Starlink against them. So that's why they're perfectly positioned to thwart the protests that were using Starlink terminals.
On the ground, it lacks the troops to spare, with Western officials relating to war fronts recently that, as of now, Russian battlefield losses have exceeded recruitment numbers for 3 straight months. Across the globe, Russia is
What? Oh. It's more sane than most Western things, but that one is a problem. That the losses exceed recruitments. Russia is the exact opposite. Yes, it's losing troops, but it's Russia isn't the one that's dragging people off the streets into the military. I mean, Ukraine's gotten to the point, I've said it before, where they're dragging midgets, people with dwarfisms, little people. There's videos of them dragging those people off the streets to send them off to the military. That's how low Ukraine has fallen. Russia, it's voluntary right now. And the reason Russians are signing up is because the deaths are relatively low. The reason Russia's progress on the ground is slow is because they're being methodical and trying not to lose troops. So this idea that Russia is losing more troops than it's refilling, that's dangerous Western propaganda, because it's what's fueling the Ukraine conflict. It's what convincing people that Ukraine can actually win. Sorry to sound like so much. It's a lot of people are taken by Western propaganda on Ukraine. So still, it's better than most to say Russia is losing millions. But just look at the map. Go back a couple months. This is Ukraine, the map from Ukraine. Look at a couple months ago. You have Pokrov. This is the way Ukraine is fighting. It's not retreating from places like Pokrov for political reasons, because it looks bad. Pokrov was a key city. And so they stayed there. And Russia slowly encircled the town. And basically at this point, it's already cut off because drones cover this. There's no way to get in and out. And all the troops inside here are wiped out. That type of scenario is not happening on the Ukrainian side. There's no, they're not surrounding Russians this way. And just by seeing this approach, this tells you how Russian army is operating. They're not just going directly for the city. They're slowly, methodically going around, taking every small town and cutting off the troops. Then when they cut off supply, then they slowly wipe out all the troops inside an area, and that's how they've been proceeding. That's why Russia is advancing slowly. But Ukraine is having colossal losses. To give you an example, when they exchange prisoners, the ratio is like 30-1 in terms of the amount of, there'll be 20 Russian dead and maybe 1,000 Ukrainian dead. Part of that, a small part of that is because Russia's advancing, so it's the one that's recovering more bodies. But even taking that into account, this is not going well for Ukraine. Anyway, let's get back to this. So that is just, that doesn't mean that these videos are necessarily bad. I'll even watch videos. I do watch videos from different perspectives like this, but you have to keep in mind biases, and that bias in terms of the death numbers on Ukraine, it's a warning flag.
Under mounting pressure from many angles at once, and it simply can't afford to risk even the appearance of allying with Iran, let alone a military overextension. It's recently been burned over Starlink, and it's watching as Ukraine is about to start European Union.
Oh yeah, that was a narrative they put out recently that by cutting off Starlink, that decimated Russian forces, and no, the Russian forces weren't communicating directly with Starlink. It did impact their ability to fly drones over Ukrainian territories in some ways, but it wasn't as big a deal as Western analysts said.
Accession talks in the near future. It can't support Iran's wartime conduct as Iran has started to attack energy infrastructure and civilian targets across the Persian Gulf, especially in nations that Russia needs to keep close, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the Emirates. Even worse, Ukraine is already coming to those nations' aid, offering to send expert troops to assist with their...
Also, I'm going to just bring up a video from yesterday in case people missed it. It was really, that I think was really important. Tucker. I'm curious if you've heard about this. Mossad's agents arrested in planning bombing operations.
Reported, but it's a fact that last night in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, authorities arrested Mossad agents planning on committing bombings in those countries. Now, that's weird.
I'm wondering if there's more information about that, actually. We're going to take a quick break because usually it takes a while for details to come out. Mossad agents bombing. Qatar, Saudi Arabia arrest in Israel. Let's see. Israeli intel spies planning bombings. Okay, that's Tucker is the source of that. Let's see some other source other than Tucker. Oh, no, then we won't get any details because Qatar knocks down Tucker Carlson's claim about Mossad. So either then I'll take that claim by Tucker with a grain of salt, but I don't think Tucker would admit it, even if it was the case. But I wonder why. You really need to get sources. Like, he needs to tell us how he got this source. I thought it was something that was widely known, that there'd be more stories about if he made this source openly. That's curious. Oh well, I might revisit it in a day or two just to details about this emerge slowly when it's intelligence stuff. Okay, enough of that. Well, it's a good thing I looked up on it to find out. Back.
Air defense. Russia cannot afford to be on the other side of that equation, helping Iran bomb its rich and influential Gulf allies while Ukraine helps to defend them. Peer deep into the mind of Vladimir Putin, ignore all the other atrocious that's probably happening in there, and maybe...
Oh, yeah, atrocious things that's happening in Putin's mind. I just said, honestly, like the Flamingo missiles, I'll give you a specific example. Flamingo missiles that are shot into Russia, they're basically manufactured in the UK and with parts also from France. They're like assembled outside of Ukraine. They're shipped to Ukraine and then shot by Western operators with US intelligence, then shot into Russia and attacking key targets in Russia. It's basically, there's virtually no Ukrainian involvement in the attack. It's a direct attack from the United States and Europe against Russia. If we say when Iran does something like that, like arming the Houthis and them attacking something, that's enough to justify attacking Iran. If Putin thought the same way, he would have already retaliated against U.S. bases in Europe, and we might be in thermonuclear war. So you're saying this horrible thing's going on inside this guy's head. I am very glad he's in charge because there hasn't been thermonuclear war, despite so many provocations by the West.
Maybe you'll find real frustration that Russia must abandon Iran in a time of need. But the decision is already made, and for Russia, the alternatives are simply untenable. Now, just before we move on to China today, we've got to take a moment and highlight the place to go for even more information on the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, as well as many other conflicts and geopolitical flashpoints that shape our world. Fronts.co is our team's written news website, premium subscriber service, and one-stop shop for all the in-depth analysis we can offer. Our core team works with award-winning journalists and experts.
Okay, I'm going to skip the ad.
To address your questions, Iran. Our subscription costs just $5 a day. If Russia can't help Iran because of military and diplomatic limitations, then it's hard to see why the same logic would apply to China. After all, China isn't engaged in any foreign wars right now. It's got both the high-tech military equipment and the available troops to rush to Iran's aid, separated only by a few...
Again, I will point out right now, what would putting troops in Iran do except make them a target of possible U.S. attacks? Iran isn't being invaded on the ground. It doesn't need troops. If China was going to do anything, it would be send air defense stuff. So this video should be asking, why isn't China sending air defenses to Iran? That'd be perfectly valid, but Iran doesn't need troops.
Few other partner nations in Central Asia. Not only that, but China regards Iran as a key strategic partner, officially and explicitly committing to, quote, safeguarding Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. Like Russia, China's military has worked alongside Iran's for years in an escalating partnership. Iran received Chinese surface-to-air missiles just last year, and there's been talk of Iran receiving advanced Chinese fighter aircraft at some point in the future. Most important of all, each nation is economically vital to the other. These days, under heavy Western sanctions, some 90% of Iran...
Oh, no problem. It's not like you have no obligation to watch every second.
Iranian oil exports go to China, accounting for well over 1/10 of all the oil that China receives by sea. China buys its uranium oil at a discount
14%.
and relies on Iran as a key part of its global Belt and Road initiative, and it's agreed to pump some $400 billion worth of investment into Iran over the coming decades. But in China's case, it's likely that intervention over Iran was never a possibility that Beijing seriously considered. Take Iran out of the equation, and China's...
I think, no, I have to disagree with this statement because China's benefiting from what's going in Iran and the Gulf enormously. Taiwan. Right now, Trump is moving interceptor missiles away from Japan, Korea, Taiwan, to bring them basically to Israel. That's what, because they only produce like 7 a month or something. And that isn't a joke. Those hundreds of interceptors that are being fired, like 7, saw another report, maybe 8 if you're being generous, but 8 a month. And that's why, so if you're China having Taiwan's interceptors disappear is a good thing. So I think they're very happy with what's going on. And what Iran really needs, air defense, one, yes, of course, but it also needs, like, it's going to need humanitarian stuff. It's going to need people to trade with it, to give it its essential supplies to keep this war ongoing. And China's going to do that. So is Russia. I mean, it's true that if they sent air defenses, that would really help out Iran, and they might still do that. Who knows?
Global strategic stance is simple. China does not go to war ever for anyone.
Oh, that's good. I've been for a good place for real-time updates on what's being bombed. Put that there. Iran is a pretty huge country. This is like as big as 3 Frances. I think, or no, maybe 3 Germanys. Hard to tell. Yeah. Now, you see, Iran has a lot more missiles that can hit the Gulf states right here. This is a pretty short. Versus Israel. It's all the way over here. It's like, I don't know if you can see, but it's probably like 2.5 times the distance to Israel. And so if the Gulf states, you hear stuff about them entering the fray, but if they actually do start bombing Iran, then you're gonna have a lot of missiles flying towards Gulf states. Those interceptors are going to be used up even faster. But yeah, and it's also good to just have a map to show stuff. We're going to talk about the Hormuz Strait in a tiny bit, but I'm going to just finish this video.
In fact, China last engaged in an armed conflict in the 1970s, despite having ample reason to fight if it wanted to in the decades since.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, Iran has never been the first to attack another country. You have China hasn't attacked another country in a very long time. It's the supposed axis of evil don't attack other countries very often, do they?
China doesn't put its troops at risk, it doesn't seek to prop up regimes by force, and it has no desire to test itself against its global adversaries under any circumstances, except the circumstances of China's own choosing. But if that's China's rule number 1 on global affairs, then regular Warfronts viewers know China's rule number 2. Do not...
And just one last comment about Taiwan. I think that this Iran thing is going to go on for several weeks, and at least, and if China doesn't make a move against Taiwan, like in the next year, I don't know if they ever will, because it will be a golden opportunity in terms of U.S. military will be more depleted and unprepared than ever. So if they're going to make a move on Taiwan, it'll be probably soon after this Iran conflict is over.
Under any circumstances, touch China's Right now, the US and Israel are carrying out a relentless bombing campaign against one of China's key economic partners, and if anything, that's a problem China would seem willing to go to war over. But much like Russia, China's response has been lukewarm at best. China condemned the US and Israel's actions. It condemned the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. It condemned the open attempt at regime change.
But again, Iran isn't collapsing. So what does it matter so far for China? The question is, if it actually does look like the Iranian regime is going to go down, will they interfere then? That's the question. I mean, so far, in a way, Iran is winning. By some metrics. It's retaliating. It's survived this so far 3-4 days now. With the U.S. trying, and every day it survives. The battlefield turns more in its favor. It's the Strait of Hormuz applies more pressure on the world. Political pressure on Trump's becomes greater and greater every day this goes on. In all types of ways, the longer this lasts. So, and since it's lasting, Iran in a way is winning.
In a sovereign nation, that was about the end of it. Instead of drawing red lines, China is calling for military restraint and peace talks, and like Russia, there's no indication that China's engaged in military consultations with Iran.
I guarantee you they're doing stuff behind the scenes. So all the countries in the region are doing stuff behind the scenes.
Over the current conflict. Western intelligence suggests that China did recently deliver kamikaze drones and air defense systems to Iran and is negotiating to supply hard-to-intercept anti-ship missiles, suggesting...
Yes, that one. If Iran gets those missiles, we might have a sunk aircraft carrier in the region.
...that China's at least doing more than Russia. But China's rule number 2, don't touch China's shit, just doesn't seem to apply here. The reasons for this are twofold, starting with the fact that right now, not very much of China's is actually made it into Iran. Despite that price tag we mentioned earlier, $400 billion worth of future cooperation, less than 1% of that investment has actually made it to Iran. That's barely a rounding error for Beijing, and it's not nearly enough to get Beijing involved in a conflict. Then there's Iranian oil, which is certainly important to Beijing, but the situation isn't black and white. The only country that delivers more oil to China than Iran is Saudi Arabia, and combined with the other Gulf states, China receives well past double Iran's contribution. Iran is deliberately targeting Gulf energy assets.
But these are U.S.-aligned countries, and U.S. is basically views China as a strategic competitor that needs to contain. And having all your energy come from countries that are U.S.-aligned, that let's say China lets Iran become a U.S. puppet state, just like the rest of the states in the Gulf. Sorry if that's a little insulting, but basically they're all basically U.S. vassal states in the region. Unfortunately, they have U.S. bases, and that's proof of that. Then U.S. can cut off the oil to China. Yes, there's still Russia, which might be one saving grace for a little bit for China, but it would still put China in a terrible spot. If China has Iran and Russia on its side, then its oil supply at least is more or less stable. China has a huge incentive to not let Iran go down.
Including a refinery that supplies some 17% of Saudi Arabia's oil exports and a Qatari liquefied natural gas terminal that supplies 20% of the world's LNG supply. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese nationals live in these countries, and China has poured incredible sums of money into regional partnerships there, just not with Iran. So, from China's perspective, who's really touching China's shit? Is it Washington and Jerusalem, who've mostly avoided Iranian energy targets, or is it Tehran, currently blowing Gulf energy installations into oblivion? From there, Iran's situation still manages to get worse because though its oil supply to China is technically under threat, China may not have much reason to worry.
Sorry about that. I think that that time I think it's on Twitch because my connection never went out. But I'll get back to the point I was making. It's only attacking oil infrastructure in the Gulf to shut it down to create pain. It isn't trying to destroy them. And because Gulf, like we saw on the map, if Iran wants to destroy all the oil infrastructure in the Gulf, it can, I think. It's too close. They have too many drones, and they can make the entire region go up in flames. They've attacked, but they've only sent 1 or 2 drones into each oil infrastructure place, basically just to shut them down, to stop production. If the United States bombs Iran's oil infrastructure, then I think things will get serious, and you'll have flocks of drones and swarms of drones flying into energy throughout the Gulf, and oil will definitely be over $100 a barrel.
Really valuable test case here, and in Venezuela, when the United States came charging in, the oil kept on flowing out. Not as much of that oil went to China, but that's just politics, and China knows that the oil...
It's pretty important politics. You can't just dismiss it as just politics. Or energy is like the most important pillar to a nation's prosperity. Just look what's happening in Europe with deindustrialization after they cut off the cheap Russian oil.
Oil market needs customers and continuity more than Donald Trump needs to feel as if he's withholding something from Beijing. Add to all of that the fact that Beijing publicly opposes Iran's nuclear program, and Iran starts to look like an acceptable loss. As for China sending Iran its weaponry, that may be more to do with marketing. If Iran happens to score some hits, then China can use those successes to market its equipment to other countries, like it did with its missiles and fighter jets after Pakistan's 2025 conflict with India. In a way, Russia and China have delivered Iran the ultimate geopolitical insult. They don't hate Iran, they aren't condemning Iran, but at the end of the day, they just don't really care that much.
Again, it was Russia jamming of Starlink that shut down the protests in Iran because they had smuggled like 30,000 Starlink units into Iran, and those were being used to communicate in the violence. And by shutting down Starlink, it shut down the protests and allowed the government to get control. So saying that Russia's doing nothing is a little bit of they are doing stuff. Chad is next. I'll definitely have a look at this later because I'm interested in the framing this channel has on stuff. But I'm going to get back to the list of things I need to get through, the interesting videos I wanted to look at.
Because I do believe that it's going to end up being a mistake.
Yep.
Just like everything we've done in the Middle East has been a mistake. Excuse me. And Donald Trump, up until he launched a war against Iran, agreed with me.
Yeah, I was listening to... Yes, he used to be, I was saying before, a peace president. Then I don't know what changed to make him... I have several theories and ideas. One, he got surrounded by neocons, by deep state operatives, and they've mastered over the 8 years of dealing with him how to stroke his ego in the right way and guide him towards the desired outcomes. And international stage is not Trump's, priority area of expertise. And so with enough people guiding him around and giving him bad info, he got guided into stuff like this Iran war and guiding him to support Ukraine. That is one possibility. Another one is I think that it's possible that he might have been brought in to told some of the details about the U.S. hegemony. Like if he's been told the dollar might collapse unless we get rid of Iran, or if we don't support Ukraine, that could have implications. Like, if he's been told behind the scenes what could potentially happen to the dollar and what the ramifications to U.S. financial system, and given that nightmare scenario by some people at the Treasury, that could be how they're pressuring him into things like the Iran war. Like, if things are really bad in terms of all the flows of capital in the world, and this Iran selling in oil and renminbi is really hurting the petrodollar, and central banks are considering holding more in other currencies, and a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And they told him, unless U.S. asserts its influence more upon the world, the dollar could maybe not collapse, but go down a lot, and there'll be inflation and you lose the midterms, that type of scenario. So they might be pressuring him that way. Third possibility, it could be him dealing. Like, he wants to, this is, I think, a big one. He got most of his cabinet through, his desired cabinet through. Like, you'd think that the deep state, the establishment, would have put up more of a fight. I think that happens because he's cutting deals to get things done without everybody in the government putting up roadblocks, everyone in Congress holding up every one of his nominees. And if he's like give and take, like he's getting stuff done on immigrations, like having ICE actually get people out. And maybe some people in the States said, okay, we'll go along with that to an extent, but you have to give us this war in Iran. That's a third possibility. So those are my three ideas. as to why Trump suddenly went from a peace president to a war president. And I don't know which one it is. Yeah, because this is just another part of it, going over that point.
He doesn't want to take us into war in the Middle East, and specifically against Iran. He was opposed to it. In fact, on many occasions, he said that he thought Obama would attack Iran just to create a distraction. Because he needed something.
On international policy, Trump has now become practically an establishment candidate. And establishment is aligned with Israel. So yes, that also makes him aligned with Israel. And I just went over the 3 reasons why I think that might have happened. I don't think it's his love for Israel, because he never displayed that before. He was close to Israel, but he didn't, not to the extent we've seen in his second term. Okay. And this is an interesting point and valid point, so I'll bring it up. Oh, no, actually, I'm going to jump right to the big thing that I should talk about, that I absolutely before.
Folks, I did not anticipate coming back on with another show today. This won't be a long one, but man.
Breaking, U.S. Navy may secure the Straits of Hormuz. Anyone who knows anything about military and geography, especially in the Middle East, this is the Strait of Hormuz right here. All this land here, these 2 islands, all of this is Iran. It is filled, honeycombed, there's cliffs on the edge of this seaboard, and it's honeycombed with missiles, drones of all types. And this, what is that, like 33 miles? Like this, right here. You see 30 miles? So this is just a little bit over like 35 miles at times, 33 miles over this side. And the shipping lanes is just right in the middle here. What do you think will happen if U.S. warships goes through this very narrow part of the waterway, Strait of Hormuz, with all this Iranian firepower right around? You're going to have sunken U.S. ships. Just showing the geography before we continue watching the video. Where was the video? I'll just go back.
It's important. As you can see on that headline right there, U.S. is offering military support and insurance for Middle East oil and gas companies. And for what, you may ask? To go through the Strait of Hormuz. And he may offer President Trump, this is just about an hour or so ago, that he released on Truth Social, an offer.
Okay, let me go on some of the implications of the fact that Trump announced this to begin with. He's desperate. It's desperation. It's desperation that's obvious. Oil prices. Like I said, Trump did something really stupid that made oil prices go down today. That's this story here that we just saw. And yes, it might have worked for a little bit, but I think by tomorrow, people will go, it's suicide to have U.S. warships go into the Strait of Hormuz. And so this is maybe only like a temporary 24-hour solution. Also, I will make one last thing. It's not just everything that's in the cliffs and everything that's in the mountains back here. They have over 5,000 mines that they could just drop into the straits here. There's nothing U.S. warships can do about that. I'm sorry, but Iran has complete control over the Straits of Hormuz, and there's nothing U.S. military can do about it. You need to take out the country of Iran, all the leadership, and it would be the last thing they'll lose control over if they're going down.
Trump, this is just about an hour or so ago that he released on Truth Social an offer that says, hey, you know what? I'm just thinking out loud here.
And like I said, one is desperation on the part of Trump. Second, it shows ignorance. Like the fact that he even would make such a bald-faced, easily exposed lie.
How's about we use the U.S. Navy and we put we'll send military escorts to get these ships to go back and forth there? Because basically the stuff.
No, but you say that, but during the first term, he was a peace president. He didn't do anything stupid in the Middle East during his first term. He didn't start any wars. It was the first time, like in 4 years, where the United States didn't, go and bomb Libya or something. He was a non-establishment candidate for those first 4 years. Something changed drastically to his second term. Domestically, no, that is more or less the same. But internationally, again, this I've already gone over the possibilities, and even if he's changed, it doesn't mean that the old him is not still in there somewhere. That he's like, if he's getting bad advice from advisors, he could just decide to sack all those advisors, get rid of all of them, and he could potentially instantly go back to being the peace president and say, okay, fuck this Ukraine and Iran stuff, we're getting out. It's a long shot, but it depends why he changed. But we don't know that.
It's all been frozen in. This is what he said. This is barely an hour.
Because at least according to me, Israel is pulling the strings. The reason, not sure. Could be the Epstein files, something else. Yeah, could be the Epstein files. I've talked about it. I think that something has been added to the Epstein files implicating Trump, and I think that's going to be used against him in the midterms. That's my main reason for thinking that is you had both the media and the Democrats at the same time that started demanding the release of the Epstein files. Now, that wouldn't have happened unless the deep state was on board with releasing the Epstein files, unless the deep state wanted the Epstein files to be released. Now, considering all the damage the deep state, like Pizzagate being confirmed real, like all the pedophile stuff, all the Epstein stuff, and all the people hurt by that, the deep state establishment has taken real damage by the release of the Epstein files. But those files were only released because the deep state pushed for it. So why did they do that? Why did the Democrats and the media push for the release of the Epstein files? If so far only the damage has been, self-inflicted, I think it's because there is something in there that they can use. There's some reason that it benefits them to have the Epstein files fully released. And I think there is the part of the Epstein files that haven't been released yet. There's allegations, probably, that have been added to it against Trump. And that's all they really need, is just put a bunch of different allegations, add them to the Epstein files, and it's a time bomb that they can use against Trump. So yes, maybe that's what they're using to pressure him somewhat. It could be one of the elements. Because those are the two areas, Epstein files and international policy, like politics, Ukraine, Iran, that Trump is not acting like he did the first term. The first term, he was all against Epstein. He was about to release the Epstein files. There are strange things going on that island. He was consistent all the way through. Then suddenly the second term, those two, and only those two areas really changed. Now, there is a story behind that. I don't know what it is yet.
Ago. He said, effective immediately, I have ordered the United States Department of Finance Corporation to provide at very reasonable price political risk insurance that guarantees for the financial security of all.
The insurance is really nothing because you've had 4 tankers that have been attacked so far. And if there's like a 100% chance that you get blown up, does it really matter if you can get insurance? No. So you need to be able to, in order to get tankers go through the straits, the military escort would actually be needed. And it would work in a way because the Iranians would focus all their fires on the U.S. ships and the tankers would be able to get by. So that is one way to let tankers go by, is just have the U.S. ship, like send them in one by one and let the Iranians attack the U.S. ship, and like that they won't attack the tankers. Is that Trump's plan? I don't think it's a good one.
Maritime trade, especially energy traveling through the Gulf. He means of Hormuz. This will be available to all shipping lines. If necessary, the United States Navy.
I mean, again, Iran could just dump all its mines in the straits, and they have control of the straits.
Will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. No matter what, the United States will ensure the free flow.
That's why the oil prices came down after he made that announcement. But it's just insane.
Of energy to the world. The United States economic and military.
Why would you tell such an insane lie just for like 24 hours of relief from oil prices, right? Because that's all it's going to give it. Like 24 hours by tomorrow, pundits will say, "Well, that's absolutely insane." The military will say, "That's absolutely insane. We cannot send ships in there." Everyone, it's just, it will not happen. There will be no escorts through the Strait of Hormuz. I guarantee you that. And there might be one escort, and then all the ships in that escort get destroyed, and then there's no further escort. That's even a small possibility, but anyway.
Is the greatest on earth. More action to come. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, that is the Persian Gulf right there, and that's the amount of combat power we have to engage this war we have with Iran right now.
What's the reason for gold growth and immediate plummet in this context? Gold, I think it's the dollar strengthening. I think the dollar graph, I don't know. The dollar goes up. The dollar strengthened, basically, and that hurt gold prices. And that could be for a whole bunch of reasons. It's probably an intervention by the of some type, shorting gold on the exchange. You can't. I would not look on day-to-day gold prices because that can fluctuate. That central banks might be buying or selling. What you need to trying to look at the daily chart is nothing. The Iran war is going to go on, and gold prices aren't breaking under. They could go down to this level. I think it's the absolute bottom, like 4,800 on the worst case scenario, while the Iran war is going on. But my bet is, which one is this? One's a good one. Look what happened when it hits the resistance here. It goes down. It bumps. It bumps. Then it breaks up. It's hit the huge resistance around 5,000 and around here, and it's fallen down. It's going down. It's breaking, and then it's going to bump up. So, unless it's some Venezuela moment or something, I think it's practically impossible. The war will go on, and within a week, gold prices will be above 5,500. If there's peace in the conflict, gold prices might come down a little bit again after that, but they can't. How far they can fall while the crisis is going on is limited.
And
and look at that. Look at this graphic. We have two ships that are stuck in the Gulf. They can't get out. I would go after them if I was Iran.
I just can't even hardly believe what I'm reading here, that we're thinking about sending American military naval vessels to escort vehicles through the Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz. Gary, if you can put that one up, that one picture you have that shows, that one right there. This just shows you it's a.
And Iran controls all of this, and look at everything they're sending all the way over to Israel and to. This is so much closer. Yep.
Relatively narrow band.
Also, gold prices fell because oil prices fell, and two fell together. Trump's declaration about escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz also reassured markets about gold prices. It reassured the markets about stocks, about oil, about everything. And so for 24 hours, I think that's all the impact it'll get. Oil prices will be down and gold prices will be down. By tomorrow, that will have reversed when everyone has had a little time to think about how absolutely absurd this idea is.
From that strait, that's the narrowest point there. Of course, you see there's Iran at the top. And so that to the right, that's where that leads out to the Gulf of Oman. And that's where a lot of our ships are at a distance. We're at a distance. And so, as you know,
I have to say, Trump has made a lot of stupid comments in his tenure, but this is somewhat, in terms of a somewhat serious proposal, this is going to be the stupidest one he's made in a long time.
20% of the world's crude oil every day goes through that, with all these oil tankers and a lot of other economic vessels that go through here. Well, since this war started, the Iranian Navy, the IRGC Navy, has basically kept them at bay. It says no one is allowed to go through. And so there is a large number of ships on both sides of that strait that are anchored.
Yeah, there's some infographic that shows all the tankers. There's a huge number of them, like right here and right here, that are just stopped. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
In the waters, waiting to see what's happened. I think at least 4 ships have been attacked and blown up. By I think some by drone, some by direct fire from some of the Iranian naval boats. And so the traffic has come to a standstill. Oil is surprising. I'm a little surprised it has not shot up, but it's a little bit higher. And now then I think with this comment from the President Trump, I think it actually ticked down a little bit because I guess investors are saying, well, that's a good thing if he's going to give insurance to these people.
Yeah, it's because a lot of people don't know what the Strait of Hormuz is and don't know what's really going on. But give it 24 hours to the impact of all this will be gone. He goes on to talk about just how absolutely idiotic it is. And from former military person, he understands that U.S. ships will be sunk if they sail into Strait of Hormuz. I mean, all the U.S. advantage is being able to hit you from far away and defend against missiles from far away. If they sail in the Strait of Hormuz, it's just asking to be taken out. It become target practice for the Ukrainians.
Knows this, and I'll tell you how I know they know it, and how you know they know it.
This guy makes the point that this might be the end of the MAGA coalition, and in a way he's right, because this is definitely going to fraction MAGA base. There's some people that are diehard Trump supporters that are going along with all his changed posture on international affairs, but there are a lot of people that big part of Trump's appeal was the no wars things and the no inflation thing. Both of those are going out the window with Iran.
None of them will use the words regime change. In fact, they keep going out on television. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth did it yesterday. Surrogates have been doing it all weekend for the administration. They won't call it regime change. They keep saying this is not a regime change war, and yet somehow magically, MAGA coalition.
It's fascinating.
In many ways, it has forever, I believe, ended the MAGA coalition.
It's
I don't know if I'd say it's danger of ending it. We'll have to see how it plays out, but it's going to split MAGA base 100% because inflation and no wars was a big part of the MAGA's appeal, and Trump has betrayed both of those. I'll just mention this because there's reports that they've elected Mojtaba, I hope I'm saying that right, as the new supreme leader. So I don't know anything about this guy, and I don't think it really matters. I think he's not the one giving the military orders, but I probably don't think he's friendly towards the United States. So, and he probably didn't like his dad getting killed. Just a guess. We'll see how that goes. Oh, this one. Yes, another great Trump line.
You said all the people you did have in mind have been taken out. What do you think?
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, you know.
Yeah. Most of the people Trump had in mind to take over after the supreme leader was killed are dead. Great planning there. Great. Yes, no wonder they wouldn't agree to a ceasefire. The people that were your allies in the country that might have had a ceasefire with you, you killed them. Yeah, it is amazing how orange Trump looks sometimes. Orange man, I think he even, at this point, I think he plays into it and purposely makes himself more orange. Then there is also CNN and other news channels were caught adding a filter to make him look more orange. It was especially obvious at the debate against Hillary Clinton. So it could be that orange because it's the media is playing games again and adding a filter.
We had some in mind from that group that is dead, and now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody.
I mean, from everything, from all the leaked reports and everything, his plan was bomb the leader, basically Friday night, whatever, get a ceasefire from Italy, have people rise up in the streets, and, everything be solved by Monday morning. It was insane. And you killed the people you expected might rise up and replace the regime. Wow.
But we have, Venezuela was so incredible because we did the
Venezuela gave Trump a false sense of security, and it was so simple, so easy that he thought that this might be just as easy. I think it was a disaster in that way, equating these two entirely different places.
attack, and we kept government totally intact. And we have Delcy, who's been very good. We have the whole chain of command, and they've been, look, the relationship's been great. We've taken out 100.
I mean, stock market could very well crash over this if oil prices head over 100. And yeah, it's going to get very interesting by the end of the week, and even more interesting by next week.
100 million barrels of oil already, and a big part of that goes to them, and a big part goes to us. And it's been great. We paid for the war many times over, and we're going to be running the oil. And Venezuela is going to make more money than they ever made, and that's great for the people. The relationship has been great. It's been seamless. Nobody's actually ever seen anything like it. If you look at Iraq, where very stupidly everybody was fired.
Gotti got the quote from him. Now I wanted to look at Tim Pool, one of the biggest U.S. Commentators on the right. And it's interesting. I've looked at Asmongold, Nuxtaku, and now him. It's interesting what part of and how much of the mainstream, basically narrative and propaganda he's absorbed.
My friends, that this is not the beginnings of World War III. And I know for some time, many people have loved to say that phrase, World War III. I mean, I myself have put it in many a title on one of my videos. But what we are witnessing now in Iran may...
Having a World War III that's on the level of World War II is, I don't think, possible. Because if anything escalates to that point, where you have millions of troops, by that time, nuclear weapons will become involved and you'll have a nuclear holocaust. So the only way for, like, Ukraine and Iran are the ways for the biggest wars possible, I think. Because non-nuclear power versus nuclear power. You can't have two nuclear powers fighting directly without nukes starting to fly at some point.
Very well be something substantially greater than just an incursion, a campaign.
That's why there's all this fighting through proxies in Ukraine and Iran.
A military strike. Most of you, of course, know the biggest news in several decades. The U.S. has launched strikes on Iran, killing its supreme leader, wiping out much of its government, but the fighting rages on. Now, of course, Iran isn't necessarily on its own.
From Russia that has had to endure all these attacks, missile attacks, basically by the West, just using Ukrainian territory as an excuse to be able to just shoot into Russia. Imagine just being able to shoot into any country you don't like, and you just go to another country and say, okay, I'm just going to use this to shoot this country. And say, oh, I didn't do it. It was the country I was standing in. That's basically what they're doing with Ukraine and Russia. But with Iran, it's now the other way around. It's an opportunity for Russia to provide help, and I'm sure that they are providing help with drones and ballistics and targeting, China too. And they're doing what we did and we are doing with Ukraine towards Russia. They are doing using Iran as a proxy against Israel and the Gulf states. So instead of direct war between nuclear powers, you have these wars going on through proxies.
The biggest threat to the United States. It, of course, does pose a threat to the U.S. in the region. They have funded attacks on U.S. troops. They have armed militia groups. And they have basically, let's just say, spread instability in the region. They are now closing the Strait of Hormuz unjustly and attacking civilian tankers.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I completely disagree that Iran is spreading instability in the region, but it isn't fair when Israel basically funded Hamas, like I pointed out before, and is funded ISIS in Syria. Why are you complaining about Iran? That's just as bad as, if not worse. Hamas and ISIS, those two have killed far more innocent people. They are the most bloody of them all, and those were the ones funded by Israel. So, yeah, the Iran is funding Houthi, funding groups that are causing chaos, but so is Israel.
Trying to transport goods and oil. They have threatened the Red Sea. Certainly, Iran has been a regional problem. But the issue goes beyond this. The invasion of Venezuela. Now, Israel launching ground strikes with troops into Lebanon. It is expanding. It is much more than Iran. And the invasion, the attack on Venezuela, the capture of Maduro.
He seems more, for the moment, actually on board with Trump's decision to attack Iran. It'll change. It'll change.
100%.
Yes, the 150 Iranian school children dead. Was it U.S. attack? I thought that was an Israeli attack, but same difference, really. Yeah, that's. There's some reports that it was Iranian munition, but no, it was we either fucked up or, worst case, some say that Israel might have done that on purpose. I'm not. I think it's a fuck up. I think it's so bad it has to be a fuck up. And I mean, if there's one target if you wanted regime change, the last thing you want to do is bomb a school of like 12-year-old girls, and that's the type of thing that's like a 9/11 type thing. 9/11, yes, but those were grown men mostly, grown men and women. 150 young girls, that's almost as bad. Maybe not quite, but almost.
And related to what is going on right now in Iran, the question then becomes, do the BRICS nations stand by? Will China let this happen? You know, part of me says they probably will. And this signals the United States, let's just call it empirical power, is back.
You see, okay, that's why I wanted to react to this. I watched his video just to see his take. America's imperial power is back. Wow, is that a bad take? Oh, God. It's what's so great about this. I've lived in a world where I've known stuff like Pizzagate is real for a while. I've known all that stuff. I still do. I'm way ahead of most commentators on Twitch and YouTube. But it's been so nice having like the average person know that like Pizzagate is real and coming up to wake up to reality. And this is going to be yet another moment because it's inevitable. The war will drag on. And let's just take Tim Pool's comment right here about U.S. imperial power. When Gulf states and Israel run out of interceptors, what is that going to do to the perception of U.S. imperial power? Having all Israel and all Gulf states completely defenseless as Iranian missiles rain down. It's going to be a disaster for U.S. imperial power. It's all around the world, like South Korea, Japan, like they can't. U.S. can't protect Gulf states. Oh my God, they're out of interceptors. They're completely out of interceptors. How can they protect us? And then they go, what? They only make like 7-8 of them a month? My God, how can that be? How can it be so? Yeah, there's going to be an awakening about the limits of U.S. imperial power because of this. And it's entirely because of Trump. He stupidly decided to start this war. It's going to be devastating to U.S. imperial power. Also, some commentators have made the point, and that Iran's demand for stopping might be get rid of all U.S. bases in the Middle East. Then we'll stop raining down missiles. What happens then? Of course, Trump, U.S. would definitely not want to go along with that. So the war would probably drag on for for even longer. But that's probably where we might end up. U.S. imperial power is going to be very badly hurt by this. And so it's funny hearing Tim Pool say, U.S. imperial power is back.
The question is, will China let it happen? Because if the U.S. is successful in its operation in Iran, U.S. global dominance is real.
U.S. already failed in its operation in Iran. The goal was for there to be regime change over last weekend. They failed in that. And you have Trump making absurd suggestions like escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz with U.S. naval ships. If Trump is making absurd ideas like that, it means there's no plan whatsoever for what's happening right now. We have completely in uncharted territory for Trump, and he's completely out of his depths. So keep that in mind when listening to Tim Pool here.
He affirmed, and this means a lot. It certainly does.
I mean,
one thing
China doesn't even need to come in at this point. Iran, I think, is doing a pretty good job on its own.
Say is American standard of living gonna go straight up, and I know there's a lot.
Did you hear that? American standard of living will go straight up. Oil prices are about to spike, and he thinks. Okay, yeah, to be fair, he's saying that if we manage to have regime change in Iran, American standard of living will go straight up. I will say you straight up, that's wrong. This is a desperate Hail Mary pass to stop U.S. standard of living from collapsing. That is the goal, to stop U.S. standard of living from collapsing because the dollar collapses and the financial system goes with it. So about U.S. standard of living going up, there's no chance. The chance of that is zero, absolute zero. The best chance is that the best case scenario, what the establishment U.S. wants, yes, regime change in Iran, and that might buy maybe a year or two for the entire U.S. financial system to keep on delay the collapse of the dollar, of the U.S. empire. But that is the best case scenario, and that's not likely to happen. It's practically impossible at this point. If regime change was going to happen, it would have happened already.
People who don't like the war and are mad about it, but we can talk about economics, the petrodollar, the liberal economic order, all of these plans. And we'll start here from the beginning, and then I'm going to break down exactly why we are in this war.
Just wait a week from now, as oil prices skyrocket, as the war keeps dragging on, and it becomes clear. By a week from now, there will be some Gulf states running out of interceptors. And when that happens, everyone will realize that everyone else is also going to run out of interceptors, including Israel. And so 1 week from now, oh my God, is the tune going to change everywhere.
And I will start in no unclear terms. I do not support U.S. strikes on Iran. However, I am also not a staunch anti-interventionist, libertarian, or leftist, or pro-Islamic.
Yes, unprovoked unprovoked attacks against a country that result in entire Middle East being in flames. Yeah, you should be against that.
Attitude is largely, we have a bad track record on strikes in the Middle East in this capacity. Toppling the Iranian government may play out like the last time we did the same thing or with any other government and prove to create further instability in the region. It can potentially, nay, it is likely to, in my opinion, get worse.
Okay, now he's finally said something that actually makes sense and I can agree with. It is likely to get worse.
Being said, I am not someone who thinks there is never a time for intervention. I am typically an anti-intervention, and the argument as presented.
If an U.S. should only be going to war, a major war like this with Iran, if there's at least like 50% support of the public and there is a vote in Congress. Both those things should be necessary. Trump actually did manage to get those for the Iraq war by lying out of his teeth about weapons of mass destruction, but he did manage to get it. Trump didn't, and that is actually an impeachable offense. And if Democrats win Congress, which is now a realistic chance with how bad this is potentially going to turn out, they're going to impeach him for this.
I've stated it.
And I won't be able to defend him because it was a completely... You can't start a major war on your own without the support of the American people or Congress. You can't. No, a U.S. president shouldn't be able to do that.
Already. Where we are now is that it appears the...
Gotta go now, brother. Very interesting stream. I'll likely be there for the next one. Oh, thanks. And thanks for stopping by. It's really interesting hearing from someone in the region. So I look forward to you tuning in again.
Moves made against Venezuela have not sparked a massive detriment thus far. The moves on Iran may very well soon. But there are questions about whether or not we should not. There are questions about whether or not Iran actually was producing nuclear weapons. And I will say this. Iran's government was very bad. It will be a good thing if they are completely dismantled.
Yeah, just because they're bad, they can always be replaced with something worse. And also, you shouldn't just be able to judge other governments. I mean, honestly, Tim Pool, how much do you know about Iran, the lives of the average Iranian people? Are you judging it by the protests that we caused recently? I will just point this out for anyone who's tuning in that doesn't know. U.S. Secretary Bennett, listen. Iran protests. Weighing in, and I want the video. Dollar shortage. Oh, there we go. What was that?
What we have done is created a dollar shortage in the country. At a speech at the Economic Club of New York in March, I outlined the strategy. It came to a swift and I would say grand culmination in December when one of the largest banks in Iran went under. There was a run on the bank. The central bank had to print money. The Iranian currency went into free fall. Inflation exploded. And hence we have seen the Iranian people out on the street.
So basically, we collapsed Iran's currency, which is practically an act of war, basically. And then people suddenly, where the prices double, they go out and protest, obviously. So we basically caused the protest. They aren't natural result of mismanagement by the Iranian regime. They were an act of war from us. So, but it was extremely effective propaganda. Tim Pool probably doesn't know about this. He probably just thinks that Iranian people were protesting because they're overwhelmingly against the government, not because we collapsed their currency and causes price to spiral. And yeah, so he is uninformed on this.
And new secular government, or let's just call it reasonable, stable government forms that isn't seeking to destabilize the region. That will be a very good thing. Ultimately, there are questions. Are the actions being taken by the U.S. going to produce stability or instability? Will we get an excess of collateral damage and civilian deaths? Will any of that be worth it? These are questions that I find it very, very difficult.
So let's just remember Tim Pool's take from today, and we'll revisit it in a week to see how much it has evolved. All right, I think I've covered most of what there is to cover. This story's remain.
There's a number that every financial analyst.
Another AI video, but he got me with the title, so I'm just going to see.
Analyst on Earth was watching on Tuesday morning. A number whose movement tells you, more precisely than any military casualty count or any diplomatic communique, exactly how much the market believes Trump when he says this war will last 4 to 5 weeks. The number is the VIX, the volatility index. The instrument that traders...
Okay, yes. Basically, he's going, this might cause a financial crisis. Any financial crisis, the financial system is more vulnerable now than it was in 2008. Any major crisis could be the last one. It could spiral completely out of control. But so far, we aren't there yet. Just a little spike in oil prices is enough to actually really do anything. But we'll eventually hit some iceberg, and there'll be fireworks this time. That's why I want to be streaming and be in a position to cover it when it happens. I look forward to that. Anyway, this will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Sorry that I stumble over my words because I'm just trying to speak so fast. No, I'll try to do better on that. And come watch on Kick or Twitch, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.